I'll bring drought and fire under filthy skies. I'll scorch the farmland and torch the forest. I'll raise the ocean, drown the cities. I'll spare no human being. So said the Furies of Earth in The Gifts of the Furies, my friend Dr. Glenda Clockley's marvellous choral and dramatic adaptation of Aeschylus's famous play, The Eumenides. And this is one of the many teaching stories from ancient Greece about how to live in right relations with the earth. In Greek mythology, the Furies are the most ancient female spirits of the earth who avenge wrongdoings against mothers and the earth. In January 2020, with the Black Summer bushfires raging and choking smoke all around, the Furies' words seemed awfully close. But after more than a decade of bitter debate, our government was divided, seemingly unable to move the policy dial to create a nationally agreed plan to address climate risks. But I know that government is a really complicated business, with lots of different voices to balance inside the House, not to mention pressures from lobbyists, and it is hard. And I certainly do not profess to know all the answers, but I am sure that scientists know what they're talking about and that we all need to work together to solve the problem. It was time for action. I distributed a discussion paper I had been working on for some time about how women could lead an initiative to bring the polarised political positions together so that we could collaborate to transition our economy and lifestyles to a sustainable, regenerative future before we're overwhelmed by climate change. And apologies to those of you who've heard this before, but I just need to say that I was inspired by Julia Grace Wales, a 33-year-old English scholar from the University of Wisconsin, who published in 1915 a plan to end the First World War called Continuous Mediation Without Armistice. She proposed that without attributing blame to either side, the neutral nations should form an independent conference to mediate between the warring countries. This was, according to Julia Grace, the natural thing to do. So in April 15, Julia was part of the 1,300 women that took themselves to The Hague for the International Congress of Women. And at that Congress, the women came together and they passed a set of resolutions which were very insightful for how to create conditions for permanent peace. And they also accepted Julia Grace's plan for how to stop the war. And they took this to all of the leaders of the countries in Europe and also in the US. And the men, because it was all men in those days, showed great interest in this most sensible plan, but it was not implemented. The war continued and killed 40 million people. So the Congress was founded really on two important ideas. The first is that we need to find a way for political parties and aligned groups of citizens who are currently thinking in polarized ways to come together in a national process, a thinking organ that could offer the opposing forces an opportunity to stop arguing, listen and collaborate to resolve this very difficult issue without renouncing their overall convictions. In Australia, we have all benefited from the industrial economy, so can we put our blame to one side and work together to secure a safe future for the young people and our grandchildren and grandchildren? We need a process, some sort of wisdom council to mediate the different perspectives and develop a national plan that meets the scientific criteria for a safe future while looking after those most affected by the changes. The second basic idea is that this is a time for women to take a lead. Our governance systems were designed by and inhabited solely by men for generations. So our policy frameworks, economics, business management, leadership criteria, and much else are the product of a male lens, which tends towards combative leadership, technology, extraction, and survival, and places caring, regeneration, and nurture of life outside of the main policy arena. And although women are now participating in ever-increasing numbers, they are fitting in to these systems. This is not to say that men are wrong per se, or that women have all the answers, but things are out of balance. We thought it was time for a new women's movement to find their authority and to finish the job. The suffrage movement called for votes for women. The women's liberation movement called for equal rights and representation. We call for a structural rebalance in the systems themselves. We're done with fitting in. It's time for autonomy, respect, and safety. So on the 20th of January, amidst a scene of shredded trees and smashed cars caused by a massive hailstorm in Canberra, 32 women arrived at the Australian Centre for Christianity and Culture, hoping that women's voices and leadership could lead a movement to collaborate beyond partisan positions and show the way to address climate change and focus on nurturing life on Earth for future generations. Jenny Robinson, one of our founding members, was looking after the registration desk. Afterwards, she wrote, "Women arrived, slowly, then more quickly. Many arrived close to the start, hiatus, unable to move from the table, preoccupied with the trashed and shredded trees, overwhelmed, car parks full of cars, all scarred by hail, a late start, polite listening, sensing gradual grounding, deeper listening. Then a chorus of women sang, 'Dear Earth.' Participants were transcended to that place far from where they were minutes before. Now connected to the ground, to the chorus women, and to each other, they were ready. We had answered nature's call, and the rest is history. We formed the Women's Climate Congress. We developed a vision statement to achieve climate balance by 2030, and a set of values that expressed, in the most heartfelt language we could muster, the cultural change that women long for. We refer to these values often, and you will see them reflected throughout our annual report that Lynn will speak about in a minute. We set about creating a network of women across the country who related to our principles. COVID played into our hands, sending us onto Zoom and talking to women across the country. We set a goal to have members in every electorate so we could talk to MPs and promote our principle of collaborative action. We currently have about 350 members spread over at least 90 electorates, and we have met somewhere approaching 30 members, senators, or their advisors. We have developed a more formalised plan for a mediated stakeholder roundtable process, which we promote when we meet with MPs and others. And we also promote the idea of a parliamentary women's group where women from all parties could support each other in representing the concerns of women and finding that new balance in our systems that I was talking about. But more than anything, in the past year, we have been about listening and learning. We have been listening to each other in our steering circle, hub group, and other circles, a massively huge but very rewarding job. Listening to the women who have joined our members' circles, online conversations, and other activities. Listening to the politicians, decision makers, and other community leaders we have met. Listening to the creative insights of artists, opening new ways of thinking and connecting us to our common humanity. And listening to the First Nations women we have met about their different approach to governance, rooted in balance between men's and women's business and connection to the earth and earth laws. And we thought we would be ready by November to bring women together from all across the country in a National Congress of Women to start to join the dots on what we had heard. We planned for a 3-day face-to-face gathering in Canberra, but COVID intervened, and we have rescheduled the National Congress as a rolling series of events launching on the 30th of November online. More about that later. There are many women who have made this all possible, and I will come back to them later after the formalities. In the meantime, suffice to say that that old Greek play about the Furies had a happy ending. The Eumenides is the only Greek tragedy that has a happy ending. Under the guidance of Athena, representing civilized wisdom, the people learn to revere the earth again, and the Furies return to their nurturing earth mother form as the kindly ones. Thank you.